Hi, Dr. Page, and welcome to session 6. We've been discussing a lot about facts, faith, and our feelings, and how to prioritize those in our life as we're going through a health crisis. But today we're going to start talking about how to step out based upon those facts and how to step out in faith as Peter did. And the one key principle here is that knowing who God is and who it is that calls us is one of the greatest motivators and one of the greatest truths that we can step out on. So, welcome to session 6. We're still talking about facts, but how our facts drive us to faith. This next picture is a very graphic illustration of what it means to focus on the right things. This is a surgery that I was performing in Bungalow Hospital in Gabon with the residents, and I looked over the drape, and there was the anesthesiologist speaking in French, sharing the gospel with an evangelique to a man, the man who was having surgery. And I had to scrub out and take a picture of it because, man, that is an example, a real-life example of someone who is focusing on Jesus in the midst of a health crisis. Show me your focus, and I'll show you your future. I want you to stop at this juncture and go back and read that passage in Matthew 14, verses 22 through 31 of Jesus walking on the water and his call to Peter to come out and join him. Now, I want you to remember that, once again, our focus determines our future. We've been talking about moving from an inward focus to an upwards focus, focusing on the facts first, and then our faith, and then our feelings. When we left the story the last time, Peter had the possibility, or was given the possibility to live above his circumstances. Like Jesus, he had been invited to come out on the water and walk above the wind and the waves. And we know the parallel of that story, that the storms equal the circumstances in our lives, our health challenges, cancer, surgery, you name it. Maybe the challenge is taking care of someone who is sick. Let me just say, those who are caregivers, I think, often suffer even more sometimes than the people that are sick. And we talked about the storms within and the storms without. The storms within are those external circumstances that we face. The storms within are more of those how we feel. We feel alone. We feel afraid. All of those things. We feel inadequate. We feel frustrated. We feel helpless. We feel a loss of control. We begin to think, of course, as I mentioned, that our problems outweigh our possibilities. We begin to doubt God and doubt that He loves us and that He has a plan for our lives. We question our faith. And so, once again, the upward focus is about focusing on the God of the promises, on who He is, on His nature, that He is all-loving, all-wise, and all-powerful, and then also remembering His promises to us. So the big question we have to ask ourselves is, yes, but how do we get there? This may be a very simplistic, but just because something is simple, that doesn't mean that it's wrong or that it doesn't work. To see our circumstances through the lenses of who God is and not the reverse. And so it begins with understanding who is this Jesus that calls us out of the boat and calls us to walk above our circumstances on the sea. And there are many passages I could bring you to, but I want to bring you to Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through about verses 20. It says this: "The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in Him all things were created." That's talking about Jesus in verse 15. And then it says things in heaven, things on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him. Verse 17 says that He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. That's one of my favorite verses. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. And He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead. Everything He might have the supremacy. Now Colossians 1:19 says this, "For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed upon the cross." You know, the one that calls us to get out of the boat and take that step of faith in spite of our circumstances and in spite of the consequences is the one who holds all things together, that who's above all things and is above all dominions and has reconciled all things to himself by dying on the cross. And if God truly is the one who calls us to get out of the boat and take a step of faith and to live above our circumstances, then what do we have to fear? So the simplicity is this: when we get distracted, we need to learn to focus on who God is, on the God of the promises and the promises of God. You see, we need to see our circumstances through the lenses of who God is, instead of seeing God through the lenses of our circumstances. Now I'm going to ask you a set of questions, and they're really rhetorical questions. You know the answer to these. But as you think about these things, it kind of puts things, your circumstances and your health challenges, your cancer, surgery, maybe the person you're caring for, it puts all these things in perspective. Who created your body? Who holds everything in your life and in your family together? Who controls your future? Who loves and who knows your family even better than you do? Who gave you or your loved ones the ability to make wealth and create wealth and earn money? Who is in control of every second of your life? Who understands how all the organs of your body function together better than any physiologist or anatomist? Who gave man the ability to even understand the human body, medicines, and health? Who created and provided the resources for man to make medicines, treat cancer, and perform surgeries? Who created those medicines, treatments, and remedies? Who gives you life? Who controls your very breath? Who has allowed all of your health afflictions? And who also has allowed your loved ones to undergo an illness? Who has promised to work all things out for good in your life? Who has promised to conform you to the image of Jesus? That's Romans 8:39. Who has promised to never leave you or forsake you? That's Hebrews 13:5. Who has the power to help you persevere in the midst of your illness? Who has the authority to deliver you from your afflictions? Who fully understands the purposes for you or your loved one's health afflictions? Who has all the answers for your life's problems? Who also has suffered and can empathize with your pain? Go and look at Hebrews chapter 4, verses 15. Who has the insight, infinite wisdom, and knows what's best for the circumstances of your life? You see, the answer to all of those questions, of course, is God. God knows all those things. I want you now to go back to your journal, and I want you to write down some truths about who you understand God is and how that relates to your circumstances. You know, I think what's even more important than the size of our faith is the size of our God. You know, I'd rather have a small faith in a big God than a real big faith and have a small God. And then I want you to ask yourself also this question. Reflect on some situations in your past that God has shown up and shown his adequacy, faithfulness, love, strength, power in your life challenges. You know, before the disciples went out on that boat, they had just seen Jesus feed 5,000 people with just a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. You know, it's amazing how they quickly forgot what God had did and the miracle that he had performed. And then I want you to write down the next question too. What specifically is God telling you to do at the present? Is there something that you need to hear from God? If it is, write that down. Is there something that God seems to be telling you to obey? Maybe to share with a friend? Maybe there's something that you need to trust God with. Maybe there's someone in your life that you need to forgive. I want you to, is there a truth or fact that you really hits you in this that you really need to step out on in faith? Answer these questions before we move on. I'm Dr. Page, the best guy to see on the worst day of your life.